So for this video, I'm going to be going over another one of the decks that I've been playing in Constructed lately, and this is the Izzet Drakes list. Now, if you're a veteran, again, you probably are really familiar with this list by now, but because I am new to covering Magic, I figured I would help other players who might be new as well, kind of showcase what's been working for me. This is also a pretty easy deck to build because it's a lot of commons and uncommons. There are some rares. There's a mythic because I'm running the one Arclight Phoenix, but the truth is I'm only even running this one because I opened one. But in general, it's a pretty cheap deck to build. Again, lots of commons and uncommons, and it's very tempo oriented. And I'm going to go through the list pretty quickly. And I'm also going to show like one of the differences of my list as opposed to a more standard list. And that's just because of cards I don't own. So right out of the gate, it's like 4 dive downs because this card is fantastic at keeping your creatures alive, and it's also a very cheap, effective instant. 4 opts. Opt is very important at helping you cycle through your deck, while also, again, putting instants in the discard pile. Now, that matters because of Terramander here, and then later on when we get to the actual Drakes that the deck is named after, you'll see why it matters as well. This is a nice 1-drop. It's a 1/1 flyer, so it has evasion, and it has an adapt of 4, so it can jump up to a 5/5. Normally costs 8, but that is reduced by 1 for every instant or sorcery in your graveyard. So as you can see, cards like Dive Down and Opt that are cheap, and specifically Opt that lets you cycle through your deck even faster, great ways to load up your discard pile. We also have cards like Shock in here, Chart a Course. Chart a Course is great because drawing 2 cards is awesome, but even if you don't get to do the activated part where you then have to discard a card, that's still fine because if you have to discard a Dive Down or some of these other instants, it's still going to count towards your Terramander and it's still going to count towards your Drakes, so Chart a Course is a great cycle tool. I'm currently running 1 Quench because the truth is I don't own any Spell Pierces yet. Despite being a common, I just don't own them. Quench is essentially Spell Pierce, but it costs 1 more, but you can hit everything. Otherwise, it's functionally the same, so that's why I'm running one of those. 4 Lava Coils because it's a great way to deal with opposing threats, specifically flyers that are trying to get in your way. Discovery and Dispersal. So this card is primarily played for the discovery portion. In fact, this deck only has 1 black source in its entirety, and that's the 1 Dragon Skull Summit. Mostly you were playing this because you get to surveil 2 and then draw a card. Surveil is extra nice because you can move things to the discard pile, which again might help you with your instants in terms of helping Terramander and your Drakes, and it also draws you a card. So for what this deck wants to do, the discovery portion is more than enough to play this, and if you do find your 1 black source and the game does run long, then you have Dispersal as an option. 1 Beacon Bolt. This only targets creatures, and it's also dependent on the other instants and sorceries in your discard pile, so you don't want too many of these. I think 1 is entirely fine as a utility piece. And then on to the namesakes of the deck. So 4 Enigma Drakes. This is a 3-cost 0/4 flyer, but its power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. So at 3 mana, this thing is very, very frequently huge, right? You're spending 3 and you're oftentimes getting a 4/4 or a 5/5 flyer. The longer the game goes, the worse and worse it gets for your opponent. And I'm going to go ahead and jump down to the other one. Crackling Drake is very, very similar. This costs 1 more, right? So it's 4, but it's still an 0/4 flyer. Its power is still equal to the number of instant or sorcery cards in exile and in your graveyard. And now the exile is important because of some of the cards like, the Beacon Bolt, right? Jumpstart. So if you do use the Jumpstart and it gets exiled, Crackling Drake will still count it, where Enigma Drake will not. Not a huge deal because there's not a lot of Jumpstart cards in here, but it is a slight benefit. But the other reason that this costs 4 versus the Enigma Drakes 3 is this, when it enters the battlefield, also draws you a card, so it helps keep your foot on the gas pedal. And then, like I said, I'm running a version with 1 Arclight Phoenix simply because I opened one. Some versions of this deck don't run it, some versions do run it. I think as a 1-of, it's fine. This is a 3/2 flyer with haste for 4, but at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you've cast 3 or more instant or sorcery spells, you can return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if you play this and it dies, or even if you discard it, for example, because of Chart a Course or Surveil or something, on a later turn, if you play like Opt, Shock as you're rifling through, not only is that pumping your Drakes, but then you can also bring this back from the discard pile as well. So great synergy with the deck. Because it has haste, it's also a nice source of direct damage. And then the rest is just your mana base, right? I'm currently running 21 lands. I've seen some versions run even less. This is something you can kind of fiddle with. This is where the expensive part of building the deck comes from, because other than this is a mythic. You may have noticed nothing else here was a rare. This is all commons and uncommons. So the downside is the mana base is pretty important. So you do want Steam Vents, you do want Sulfur Falls. I'm choosing to run the one Dragon Skull Summit here because that's just what I opened and I own as my one black source for this, and then Islands and Mountains. So the good news is if you invest in these lands, hey, lands are the sort of the thing you're going to use for as long as they're available in the format, so you will get some mileage out of these. But yeah, this is a pretty inexpensive deck to build, and now that I've kind of walked you through it, let's go ahead and jump into some games so you can see the deck in action. Alright, here we go, jumping into a game with the Izzet Drakes list that I was just talking about, and this is a great starting hand. It's pretty common to keep with 2 lands with this deck, just because there are a number of ways that you can cycle. We have the Discovery, we have the Opt, so we're going to go ahead and actually keep this. We're also on the draw, which makes it even better, but your mana curve tops out at 4, so you don't usually need much. We're actually going to start with this and pay the 2 life because we want to play Opt at the end of their turn. This also, by starting with this, leaves us with the option to shock something if necessary, but we'd like to go with Opt into Discovery the following turn if they don't develop something, or maybe Lava Coil if it's a really nasty threat. Go ahead and let that resolve. Wow. Yeah, that is a bit of a problem. If they get to that point, that's a bit of a problem. Now, again, I wanted to play Opt that last turn, but we're going to go ahead and just shock this, because giving them a 3-2 this early feels bad. So we're going to go ahead and develop this, and we're going to take our Discovery since the board is empty. We want that island, so we're going to go ahead and throw this to the graveyard, I think. But we do want the island in our hand, because again, that will give us 2 red and 2 blue. So from this point on, everything in our deck is officially online in terms of things that we want to play. And we are up against this mid-range exploration style deck. And we're going to go ahead and develop the Drake here. Now, this Drake is a 3/4 in case you're wondering, because this still just counts as 1 card even though it's a split card. But all 3 of our cards in the discard pile are instants or sorceries. And I got a feeling this is going to be a bit of a race here, so we're trying to generate some positive tempo. And yeah, that was bad for us. Let's hope they don't have more of those. Go ahead and do this, and again, play a Drake and draw a card. So now we have a lot of options in our hand for potentially dealing with threats, but if they have a land and they develop that 4/3 that can become indestructible, that could end up being an issue for us. This is also an issue. We will absolutely want to get rid of this. And they have the land. And they have the cast down. Okay. Again, overall not great for us at the moment. And let's go ahead and develop the Phoenix. And attack. We're gonna wait on killing anything because we want to have our options open. Now the good news is this Phoenix, because of the ability, if it does somehow die here, will give us some options for bringing it back. Again, we have no way to prevent this, sadly. So we're going to go ahead and let that resolve. Could have taken the lava coil on that the last turn, I suppose. We're going to take a bit of damage here. Let's go ahead and shock that just to slow him down a bit. Now we can go lava coil, and then either Opt or Terramander. Let's get rid of this. I think we want to go with the Terramander here. And let's get rid of this. Now we're taking potentially 4 here, but again, we're kind of trying to race, so at least at the moment. This will end up being able to adapt and block.
Only a fool.
Or it won't. I mean, the good news, if they use this to kill the Terramander, then we can go ahead and use the Phoenix to get Fresca out of the way. Yeah.
Still have their uses.
So again, we're kind of paying with blood there. It's a great pickup for us. But I think we want to opt first. Just to see what we have. Don't want to draw another opt. Though the mountain wasn't a whole lot better. That wasn't a whole lot better either. We'll declare you as attacking that because we need to get rid of that. And hope that this is enough to stall for a bit. Again, not lava coiling that might have ended up being a play mistake at some point there. But put that into play tapped. And I need to have a blocker. And this sadly does not contest that. So as cool as it would be to swing, we need to stall. Now, if they have removal, we're in a bit of a world of hurt here. If they have a creature, it's also problematic. All right, so here is what we are gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and play this. See what we can draw. Another Drake. Well, let's go to combat. Send our flyers, because we can play this, and you guessed it, play another Drake. So we'll draw a card and hopefully have some blockers, and hopefully catch a concede here. This was a little bit dicey, and I will admit it was a risk letting this stick around, but we pulled down a victory, so that's good. And get to go up a tier here. Season just reset and I haven't played a ton of Constructed, so hooray, silver. And let's jump into another game and, oh, we'll see what the reward is, sure. Let's jump into another game and see how the deck does. All right, here we go. And this looks like a fine opening hand. We have our colors covered. We have a chart, a dive down, discovery, nice and early. Oh, whenever I see this, I really, I almost always wish that I have a shock. Because if they take 2 damage to do this, it means they're almost always trying to ramp into something. Like immediately. But I guess not. They usually like punishing them. Oh, of course there's the shock I was looking for. But at this point, shocking it doesn't feel that good. We're going to go ahead and take our discovery. Because we also still need to find a blue source here. Because we're going to end up with like 5 red sources. We also don't want to dive down, so... Alright, fair enough. Yeah, we need to find another blue source so that we'll be able to develop this Drake. Or at least hope to. And just like that, our opponent has an awful lot of mana available to them. Alright, well... let's go ahead and try to shock at least one of these. Slow it down a bit. And then we're, again, fine with the discarding portion. Let's just go ahead and chart a course. There is the other blue source we were looking for, at which point we no longer need even more mana. Okay. So that's not great for us.
Let's add this battle to your record of bad decisions. I constantly seek to innovate.
So they can use that for generating an awful lot in their favor. No, we would like Sulphur Falls, excuse me. Let's pay attention to what we got going on here. Go ahead and develop this, because the -1 isn't too terrible there, but we can potentially get to where we can threaten that. Okay. It's a big boy Crassus, but I'm okay with that. We're going to go ahead and take this path, because they're tapped out. And then we're also going to go ahead and shock this. And then we're going to move on to the combat phase. But we would like to get rid of this. And we will play our island, because that allows us to both develop this Pteramander and save the dive down in case they try to go with targeted removal. And that was a very, very good turn for us, overall. Sadly, that is not something that we have an answer for.
I look forward to seeing your mistakes.
Yeah, still not something that we have an answer for. I'm not too worried about the Knight with Vigilance, though, so... not the end of the world here.
I don't mind if I enjoy this.
And again, we got a lot of options here, but let's go ahead and try to adapt this. And getting rid of this, I think, is still of the most importance here.
Outcome surprises even me.
And we're gonna make another vigilance token. I think I'm fine with that. Let's just go ahead and end the turn here. Could have used Lava Coil this turn, but let's wait in case they play something else that we really want to deal with. Yeah, see, like that. Certainly something that we would prefer to remove. Alright, so Chart of the Course is very, very nice to us. This is a tapped flyer. Let's go ahead and just get our attacks in first. And then we'll decide what we want to do from there, I think. Drawing cards is good. Play our land per turn. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. And we'll have the quench. Likely not going to matter a ton here, but now knights are going to get a healthy bonus. These, however, will not. This will not. But at 12 here, we are kind of pushing it. Like any sort of additional damage, and they will just win the game. So this is a very tight race. I think he's doing the same thing. I think he's counting the damage here. We are going to say no to that. Alright, so they are going to try to slow us down. But we're going to give our creature hexproof here. So this enters play, but then cannot target this. Oh wow, they have another Hydroid. Alright, so we go down to 1. And they've got the 1 blocker. So if we can get rid of this, we're home free. And there you have it. Wow. Here comes the coil. And they have no flyers, and there's the concession. So, very close game. Some good back and forth turns, and quench actually mattered. So even though I complain about it in the list sometimes, saved me a little bit. So anyway, that's 2 games. Hopefully you get a feel for the deck. And anyway, thanks for watching. I hope to catch you in the next video.